Hi, this is Governor Pete Ricketts, and welcome to another episode of the Nebraska Way, where it's all about how Nebraska is growing and more. We have a great in-person this time, which is nice. A lot of our episodes lately during the pandemic have been remote, but I've got somebody here in studio. Well, it's not really a studio, it's the hearing chamber. But whatever, we're still here in person. And it's Jeff Nordhook, who's the CEO and president of Nelnet. And Jeff, I'm going to ask you to explain a little bit more about what Nelnet does and the student loans and that whole business aspect of it. But Jeff is the CEO, president and CEO. Before that, he was the president of Nelnet. You've been at Nelnet for how many years now?
25 years.
25 years. So you've got a number of positions you've had at Nelnet. I'm going to read through a couple of them. Obviously, as CEO, you lead the executive team for the development and execution of your strategy. You also lead Nelnet Diversified Solutions, which is the loan servicing division. Previously, you were the president of Nelnet, the senior vice president of National Education Loan Network, which is a Nelnet company, vice president of the predecessor, Union Financial Services. Before that, you were 7 years in various capacities at State Street Capital Corporation in Boston, right?
Yep.
So you're in Boston for that. And then you also earned your bachelor's degree at the University of Nebraska and got your master's of business administration from Boston University. You're a member of the Young Presidents Organization. Are you still young enough to be in the Young Presidents Organization?
That's up to definition of it. Where young has been cut off. As I get older, yes, in my mind, I still am.
All right, very good. And then, of course, you're also on the board of directors for Cornhusker Council Boy Scouts. So great. I'm on the Mid-America Boy Scout Council up in Omaha and the Lincoln Community Foundation. And you're also, one of the things we'll talk about is you're part of the Good Life is Calling ambassadors. So we appreciate that as well. You enjoy hunting and fishing. And of course, again, great career in business here. So we got a number of questions I want to hit upon, but let's just start with, just tell us a little bit about growing up here in Nebraska and how you ended up in Boston, and tell us a little bit how you met your wife and all that sort of good stuff.
Yeah. So
and your kids and all that stuff.
Yeah. So we moved to Nebraska when I was 4 years old. Moved to Oakland, Nebraska, in Burke County. My dad was a Methodist minister, and the Methodist Church moved ministers around, and he got placed in the small town of Oakland, Nebraska, when we were all little, and grew up here. In typical small town life, just hunting and fishing is what we did. It's 4 boys and 1 girl in my family. And I was going back thinking, about, I think when I was 8, when I got my first shotgun, and I think I was 14 when I was allowed to go out hunting with my friends on my own.
So now, do they have hunter safety in school? Did you take hunter safety in school?
Back then, no. Now okay. I think you can, or now it's all online, of course.
Well, now it's all online, but I was going to say, I actually, in 6th grade, took hunter safety. And that was part of the curriculum.
Oh, did you?
Now, this was in Omaha, even. In fact, it's pretty cool. Game and Parks actually still has the record from 1976 of me passing that hunter safety class.
And you passed.
And I did pass, yes.
Because we went hunting this weekend, and so, yeah, it's good to know that you had passed. I should have asked you that question. So, yeah.
Check my card.
Yeah, check your card. but yeah, typical small town life, and it was the good life, right? It was simple and great schools and a great town, and loved my experience. When I graduated from high school, my father passed away when I was 49. So there was only one chance to go to college, and that was University of Nebraska. So I have a typical story. I had to, my mom, when I went ready to go to school, I was the 4th of 5 kids, and she said, here's $200. This is what I have saved for you. So I knew I had to get down here, and I had to work. I had to borrow and find my way, and I did. And when I got done, I had met a girl in college that wanted to live in Boston. That was my real, I wish I could tell you that I had this dream of living in the big city, and I did want to go into banking, investment banking, and so
I had my whole career planned out.
Yeah,
but it was just about a girl.
Yeah, in the end, from Alliance, she was from Alliance. Yeah, and so anyway, I moved. I moved to Boston to be with her, and I applied at every bank and investment bank in town. Ended up getting a job at State Street, and going into investment banking, and learning about asset finance, and towards the end of that time period, my old college roommate called me, Mike Dunlap, and said, hey, I had this idea to do financings outside of Union Bank. At the time, he was president of Union Bank. And we struck a deal. And when we got done with that deal, he said, I want to start a company that does just this, outside of the bank. And that We named it Union Financial Services, not Creative because it was Union Bank.
Right.
And it eventually became, the name changed to Nelnet, and that's another long story. But so we started out with 4 guys, and they were all in different cities. We were a virtual company.
So you were still working in Boston at the time?
I was working in Boston, and then I met my wife. Was not the girl I chased to Boston, just for the record. I'll say that publicly. But she
Right,
got
your wife would like probably everybody to know that.
yeah. She went to Wellesley College, and she got accepted to medical school in Chicago. So when we started the company, Mike was here in Lincoln. I was Chicago office. We had another partner in Phoenix and one in Denver. We were truly a virtual company with 4 people.
Kind of ahead of your time.
Yeah, and that was 1996. We had $50,000 of capital that we started with. Fast forward today.
So where did you raise the money? How'd you get the $50,000?
Mike's family.
Mike's family
Yeah.
put the money in to start it.
And
Okay.
we were profitable, because I'm writing about this in my shareholder letter right now. I'm writing. We've been
First
in business.
month?
Yeah, what's that?
First month you were profitable?
Well, first year. Yeah,
First year,
first 6 months. And then 25 years, we've always had profitability. We applied to certain business principles that we learned in business school here and that lots of Nebraska business people adhere to, right? Really conservative philosophies and practices. And fast forward to now, we are publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. I think we're the largest private employer in Lincoln. And Omaha, well, in Nebraska for sure, well, in Lincoln for sure. It's over 4,000 people here in Lincoln, 9,000 people in the company. We have now operations in 13 states, in multiple countries, and still growing. And so there's 4 primary, we've diversified now into 4 primary different businesses.
Yeah. So a couple things. One, so how did you meet Mike Dunlop?
So when I got here, I said I had to go into the borrowing thing. So I am a big proponent of student loans, because lots of people today, 45 million Americans have to borrow to go to college. If I had to borrow, I had to work. And so I took a job at Union Bank, working with would now be considered like an internship program, but it was more like a college rotation program. So you could go into the bank and work in different departments and learn about banking and get paid. And so I was working as a teller at the time. Mike was working as an auditor, and he, at the time, and I think it still happens today, if you're a teller, you can be asked to step aside, and an auditor comes in and counts your cash and makes sure that everything balances. So Mike was my auditor. He got done. He always claims that the cash drawer didn't balance by $1, but it balanced. and you know, I said, "Who are you?" And he told me, and next thing you know, we were talking, and you know, it wasn't a few months later we were roommates.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, so why don't you tell us a little bit about the different lines of businesses for Nelnet?
Yeah, so that very first business was to acquire student loans and finance them in the capital markets. So we would buy loans, finance them with large dollar amounts, live off the net spread in between. Then we diversified into...
And this was a little bit different, because wasn't one of Mike's ideas that before this was all done through the bank, and then something happened, or he believed you could do it outside of the bank, and that gave you a little bit more freedom with regard to the capital requirements and so forth?
Correct. So at the time, the decision was, do we borrow the money within the bank and build this, or do it outside? And Mike's view was that this entity, this idea, could be much larger than the size of the bank at the time. And if we had originated all those loans or acquired them in the bank, and then the capital rules had changed, the capital wouldn't be large enough in the bank if it was consolidated
To
onto
support
the bank's. Yeah, support it. So the fear was it could get consolidated onto the bank. And Mike was right eventually. Like, happened maybe, it wasn't as soon as he thought, but about 15 years later. So we started the business outside.
But it was kind of an innovative idea on how to do this. Was anybody else doing it this way?
The only other entity doing it at the time on a for-profit basis was Sallie Mae.
Okay.
Yeah. And
they don't really count either.
They don't. Yeah. So
that's a quasi-government organization.
It was,
so.
and then it spun out. And there's a long story and history into the whole program. But so we started outside the bank, and we, of course, he was right in the sense that it grew significantly faster than the bank did. The bank is a phenomenal bank, right? It's the 3rd largest bank in Nebraska. Union Bank is an incredible institution, but we grew this business outside much faster, and we kept then, you know, investing the earnings back into the company, growing it. Finally took it public in 2003, and then diversifying into other services.
And you were telling me before, like, what's your annual rate of return? Because over the years, you guys have had a very impressive...
Yeah, so since we went public in 2003, and it was extremely high before then, but since we went public in 2003, we started copying the table that Warren Buffett does in Berkshire about how he compares to the market and his constant average growth rate. So ours has been, on average, 18% since we went public in 2003. So we've had a constant average growth rate in our book value of over 18% compounded, which means now we have well in excess of $3 billion of tangible net worth from that original $50,000 investment.
Yeah, it just shows you, and it shows you the power of compounding,
Yeah.
right? Like if you, even off a small amount, starting with $50,000, for example, and you just keep compounding it at that 18% year after year after year, that's how you grow a book value with $3 billion. I
Yeah,
mean,
it creates a flywheel of earnings if you're reinvesting those earnings smartly.
yeah, cool. All right, so now tell us about the 4 different parts of Nelnet.
Yeah, so we still have this loan portfolio, and we've diversified that into outside of student loans into consumer loans and different asset classes. We consider lending and asset management as one division. The second one that spun out of that then was servicing. So we wanted to be in control of the billing and collecting on those assets, those loans. So we acquired a servicing business, and then we kept acquiring a bunch more and rolled them up. And now we are the largest student loan servicer on the planet Earth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
$450
right here in
billion.
Nebraska. That's
yeah,
awesome.
right here in Nebraska. $450 billion in loans that we service for over 20 million consumers in the United States. So we're interacting with them on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. So that's the second large business. The other one we call Nelnet Business Services, and there's a bunch of businesses that roll up into there also. That's really education services and payment plans. Another phenomenal Nebraska story. All these, you'll come back to the same theme, hopefully, and as you go into your podcast here. But
This is called the Nebraska Way.
It is. But this one was a business that started originally in Grand Island for one Catholic school, which is, and you're Catholic, am I right? Yes.
Right.
So, and I can make fun of the Catholics and all their kids because that helps with the story.
Okay.
So a lot of people want to send, Catholics want to send their kids to private Catholic school. And as you know, you have to pay tuition. And so schools are great at educating people, but they're not really good at collecting receivables, tuition. So this
Right.
business idea was for one school that they would outsource and do the billing and collections for the families, and they do it through payment plans. So your kids go to school, you owe a tuition check every
That
semester.
comes out of your check.
Yeah,
whatever.
you do an ACH, just set up a simple ACH, and it just comes out automatically, and therefore the school doesn't have to collect, and we do it for you. So that expanded, and then it kept growing to more Catholic schools and started going nationwide. And now we're the largest payment plan provider in the United States, K through 12, and expanded to other private schools too,
Right.
faith-based schools.
You're not just sticking to Catholics.
No,
you're willing to take the Lutherans' money too.
We do. We have a large, we have a large Jewish community in New York and in Boston and other places too. But right now, we'll take anybody's money. It's true. We don't give it around. So we have a 40% market share in the United States in private schools of collecting and billing tuition for it.
Wow, that's really impressive too.
Yeah. So that's the third business, and then we had another Nebraskan who came to us on the fourth one, which everybody knows about here locally, was Brad Moline for Allo, and he had a little business and a little idea that was there's rural Nebraska, needs high-speed internet, and they weren't getting it by anybody, right? Lincoln and Omaha have it. Even Lincoln was suffering heavily at the time of slow internet speeds because the telecommunications industry was not investing in rural broadband. And so he had this idea.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt for just a second.
Yes.
By the way, this is exactly why we passed the Rural Broadband Bridge Act in Nebraska last year to invest another $40 million on top of the $30 million that we did with the CARES Act money to start connecting rural households to 100 by 100 speeds, right?
Yep.
Because right now there's like 80,000 Nebraska households that don't even have 25 megabit download, 3 megabit upload speeds. So it's still a problem.
Yeah, it's still
an issue.
And you can't operate in a global economy. You can't. It's a death knell to a small town, right? It's like saying you don't have power.
Right. How are you going to get anybody to move there if you don't have high speed internet?
Yeah,
right?
and they can't work from home. They can't do all this stuff. But if you can have the good life and work and live there comfortably. And you'll see, since you've made those announcements, we're pulling fiber into Fremont and Norfolk, and you just pick a town along, the interstate.
That was in Creighton and Gordon as well. So
yeah, so we're pulling all over. Yeah. So, but Brad came with this idea. Said, "Hey, I want to take high-speed internet because if you look at the United States, the infrastructure, there's these huge bands of fiber that come down the interstate system, and they built that in 2008 after the credit crisis for shovel-ready type of programs." But they had a vision that somebody would come along and pull it off of that into these rural areas, and that's what Allo does.
Yeah.
So Brad came to us and said, hey, I'm doing this, but it's a capital intensive business. Someone has to invest a lot of money to put the fiber in the ground, right? It's the cost of the fiber and all the construction costs to do it. So all of us being the 4 top people in the company, and now the 5 top people are all from small towns in Nebraska, every one of us. And you can pick a town and tell a story. And we all knew how important this was. So we took a big bet and we put $300 million of our capital into that company to help them expand across all of Lincoln, for one. We pulled it underneath the entire city, and now across all these towns in Nebraska and growing. We're pulling towns into Front Range of Colorado. We've won towns in Arizona. It's just a rapidly expanding story, again, from a small town.
How do you make the jump from like Colorado? I get that's our next door neighbor. So expanding from Nebraska to Colorado, how did you make the jump from Nebraska to Arizona? Was this just like somebody said, oh, hey, it's cold in Nebraska in the winter, so I want to go down there and work, or what? How did you guys end up in Arizona?
Well, it's like anything. You start going to conference, you start getting the word out, and people figured out that we did it, and we're doing it profitably, right? That we're doing it successfully. We're competing against large telecom companies and making this work. There's all these towns of a certain size that were not getting the attention of the major players, and that's where our niche is, right? Just finding niches in mid-sized towns that have density of people that are growing, that for some reason don't have fiber there yet from the major players who are investing primarily in NFL-type cities, and it works. So we're striking deals with cities and states to bring their people needed service.
So it sounds like Nelnet and Mike Dunlap in particular are very entrepreneurial companies. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, I think people consider us very entrepreneurial. And I haven't got into this yet. Now we're investing in all types of other things, right? So we're a large real estate investor here locally. We are, I think, the premier investor on virtually every startup company in Nebraska. I mean, you look at some of the success stories right here in Lincoln, Huddle, Company Cam, Open Doors. You pick any of these and you'll see Nelnet's name. There was one in the paper, which is Basic Block this week, where we invested in a startup company that's providing technology to truckers.
So now, with regard to Huddle, aren't you also part of like investor? You said real estate, but are you involved in their building as well?
Yeah, we are a part owner of that building.
Yeah, it's a really cool building. They've got like a basketball court.
It is super cool.
Huddle's very cool. Yeah, it's very. I mean, it's a great example of Nebraska entrepreneurialism, and really giving you the same kind of atmosphere you'd get, say, in Silicon Valley, except that you get it here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and you don't have to pay all those high prices of being on the coast.
Yeah, you call it Silicon Prairie. Yeah.
You mentioned that a bunch of the executives are from small town Nebraska. Talk about, what do you think, I mean, you've done business in other parts of the country, but tell me, what do you think is special about Nebraska, or what is it about Nebraska culture that's helped your company succeed? Yeah,
it's really interesting. You know, Tony Goins wrote that book, It's in the Water.
Something in the Water.
Yeah, and it does spur a thought. What is it? And if you talk to people, I mean, it really comes down to certain things. One is a work ethic. People here have an unbelievable work ethic. You take it for granted living here. Like I said, I lived in Boston, I lived in Chicago. My wife she went to medical school and did a residency in Denver, so I lived there 4 years. But the rest of places in the United States don't necessarily have the work ethic we have here, all the way down. There's a reason we have a less than 2% unemployment rate, right? People want to work, and they work hard, and they want to be rewarded for that work. And so we find that there is no better place to do business than right here in our home state. That's why we built our headquarters here. Yeah. And you just go to these small town stories, and everybody has one about how they grew up, frog hunting or whatever it may be, right. And the basic things that make life good, people appreciate here, and it comes through in the success of the businesses from the state.
Yeah. Great quality of life here. Mm-hmm. So tell me a story about some of the growing pains you may have had as you've grown up this company. Really, again, starting with $50,000 of capital and 4 people, into, you said 4,000 people across the country?
9,000.
9,000 people, 4,000 people in Lincoln, 9,000 people across the country. Yeah, because you're one of the larger employers in Nebraska. What kind of growing pains did you have, or is there a story that just kind of like pulls together like how you all overcame problems to continue to grow?
I would go bring a credit to the credit committee, and they have to vote on something, and it was some progressive idea on business, and they would they were all these curmudgeons, older guys, which I am now, and they were so like no, and they were so skeptical of everything. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Why are you so skeptical of everything in life? And I realized they had earned their stripes, and they were
right. They got scars to show for it.
Yeah, they earned that risk aversion. But I would say, for us, that's honestly been super painful. Has been there's things they don't teach you in business class, like in business school, and they don't teach you that politics comes into play and that people have different agendas and they come after you for those purposes when you think you're apolitical. So we've learned, the hard way on that. We've had people come after us that we didn't understand why at the time or even what was happening. We had to hire consultants and experts and you just say, what is going on here? Why did this happen? We fell into some trap somehow. But we've had, a ton of fun along the way. A part of what we do at Nelnet too, so we have 5 core values, and I think you'll appreciate that, and we can go into some of the stories based around those. But number one, and this comes right down to, Jay Dunlap teaching us this, and in virtually every Nebraska company, which is we believe in customer experience. Create an unbelievable product, but then have it wrap customer service around it that's excellent. And you'll see that through all of our businesses. And then number 2 was make it a great place to work. Yeah. So how do you recruit the best talent, keep the best talent? And that it means you have fun, in my mind, at work. Some people it might mean great facilities like our buildings or high pay.
Well, you have great buildings.
Yeah, thank you. And but a lot for me, it's how do you make work fun? And so through that, we have done a lot of great things. And it started out, we used to have an all-company meeting until we got over about, 3,000 people or so, where it became very difficult because our customer service would go down if we called everybody together at once. Right. But so what happened was we decided we were growing the first time we did it over like the Cornhusker and had a couple hundred people. Then we moved to a bigger space, and then we moved to the Rococo Theater because we had 1,000 people could fit in there, and then we just kept getting bigger. So then eventually we had to go to the arena, the PBA, when it got built to have thousands of people in there. But in that process, between the Rococo and the PBA, we did it at the Lead Center, and so out of a whim, I talked to our CFO at the time, Terry Hymas, who's now the Chief Operating Officer. Yeah, and I said, hey, we're on the stage of the Lead Center. And when I was in high school, I was in one acting, and he was in plays too. I go, let's just kick this off and be Romeo and Juliet and walk out and do this skit before everybody else. It was really impromptu. And he's like, you're going to be Juliet.
Great, your idea, you're Juliet.
Yeah, that's right. So we get out there and did this whole Romeo thing, and everyone laughed and cheered, and then we realized we were on to something. And so every all-company meeting after that, we would dress up and put on a skit or make it fun. And it just became kind of legend until COVID hit, and we decided it was too hard to get that many people together.
Yeah. All right, so you got through 3 of the 5.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm glad you keep bringing me back. So we've got 3 of the. You're talking about the
values.
Core values, yeah. So great customer service, make it an awesome place to work. The next one is diversification, and that's why we diversified into all these businesses and continue to diversify in all these businesses.
So let me stop you there, because that's actually kind of counter to what they teach in business school, right? In business school, they say, like the conglomerates of the 1960s all got broken up with corporate raiders and so forth. You're really supposed to focus on just one thing. Now, I think what I heard from your kind of 4 main lines, 3 of them are actually really tightly related. The Allo one's a little bit different, but it's still customer service is a big deal. Right. So so when you say diversify, that's a little bit different? Is that to balance you off against one business sector having a bad cycle or something? Or
that's exactly it. That the whole concept is don't put all your eggs in one basket. And a perfect example of that, if you go back, we started diversifying, and there's a bunch of other businesses I've talked about that are underneath those major divisions, and we've been very acquisitive. We've acquired well in excess of 50 companies.
Wow.
And so
that's a skill all on its own, is to integrating those kind of companies.
Yeah, buy them, integrate them. Like with the size of these businesses didn't get to where they were just organically. There was a lot of acquisition and merger in there also. But our theory was that the student lending business was very political, and therefore you never know what's going to happen as the political winds change. And sure enough, in 2008, the core business that we did, which is the Family Federal Education Loan Program, we were lending to people, but it was backed with a federal guarantee. It was nationalized. A lot of people don't know this. It was nationalized under Obama when they passed the Affordable Care Act. That in fact, the Affordable Care Act was $80 billion short, and it had to be budget neutral to pass it. So they nationalized student lending. They said it would save $80 billion, and they used that savings in the budgeting and do reconciliation to pay for Obamacare. So at that point in time, we were out of that primary business that we were in. But luckily, we had diversified into servicing and payment plans and all this other stuff.
Great example of how it paid off.
Exactly how it paid off.
And just getting back to your point about the politics, we experienced this at Ameritrade too. We bought a company in New Jersey called Daytech, who had their own regulatory issues. And we had very good relationships with then it was called NASD, now it's called FINRA, down in Kansas City. And so we always had great relationship with our regulators, and they had terrible relationships. And so we got into this whole big mess, and we started going to DC to kind of figure out what was going on, as well as the New York regulators. And we found out, because again, we were kind of apolitical, and we found out that our competitors were in DC for years bad-mouthing us, saying what an evil company we were, because we didn't have any representation there. We didn't have anybody there talking to the executive branch or the congressmen or the senators about hey, this is what we do, this is what Ameritrade's all about. And so consequently, they were framing us and making us look bad. So when we showed up in DC, we had a terrible reputation, and we had no idea why. And so getting back to your point, like, again, if you're a company, you absolutely have to manage this just like you manage anything else in your company.
You have to. And in fact, I believe, maybe I'm biased, but we have done a great job of investing in relationships in DC just so they understand what we're doing and how we do it, so they can come to us as a subject matter expert, and they do on both sides. So that diversification was key, was number 3. And then number 4 was open and honest communication. And we found that a lot of companies aren't open and honest with all their constituents, as we call it. So obviously with each other, right? Having a frank dialogue, calling it as you see it, but with your associates, right? Being very open with what is going on at the company, good or bad, with your regulators. That's our big thing too. Yeah. When the regulators came into us, I tell our team, you should have a complete open kimono. There should be nothing to hide. If they find something good, we'll get better because
we'll fix it.
Yeah, we'll fix it. And so we've got that reputation also. And we believe, this goes back to Nebraska philosophy too, and I think how lots of companies here operate. So we believe in a balance of all your constituents, right? So you have to look out for your customers, number 1, but your associates, right?
Yep, teammates.
Your shareholders, right? You got to always keep the bottom line in mind, or there are no customers or associates, right? You have to balance that, and then the community, right? You should be a great community steward,
right?
And that goes into our 5th value, which is giving back to the communities in which we live and work. So from day one, we decided we'd set aside 2% of profits to set up a foundation to give back to the communities.
Oh, cool.
Which doesn't sound a lot, but you go forward now.
Yeah, when you 40 compounding, we talked about the compounding already.
It's $40+ million that we have either given away or have reserved in our foundation to give away to charities in our local communities to be a good community steward.
And is there one in particular, or is there several communities? Is there a theme about your philanthropical giving?
So we definitely try to focus on education, because if you summarize a lot of those businesses, and you can even classify Allo as education services, right? We provide fiber to school systems and colleges and universities, but most of the businesses we do, the vast majority of business is driven in the education industry. And so we have set up a great scholarship program with Southeast Community College. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars we give to send anybody in Lincoln, Nebraska, for example, in this case, anybody who qualifies for a free or reduced lunch to first year of college free.
Cool.
And the reason is, the theory is, if you go for 1 year and you pass, you'll keep going.
Right.
Yeah. So we don't want cost to be a factor for people to go to college or not, which it is. A lot of people don't go because of cost. So, and then we focus on all types of other charities. We have, just like TD, I'm sure, we give money to all of our different operations or offices and let them give it to their local charities, whatever their people want that they feel is most impactful in their community.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you support that? Who's the guy that's got? Oh, I'm dropping the name of it. He's got the skateboarding place that also has the coffee place.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah.
What is that?
The mill, Rabble Mill. Yeah. Yep.
So that's a cool place.
He's great. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's an awesome place. So, again, one of the places you think you might find on the coast, and and helping out disadvantaged kids and all that sort of stuff.
Allo has really worked with them a lot.
Oh, cool.
I think he actually is from the same hometown, Imperial.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. And he's such a cool dude. I saw him the other day. I'm like, God, I wish that's another guy. Like, he's so cool. But Allo supports them a lot. We support that. They're actually opening up a school within that place now.
No kidding.
Yeah, Lincoln Public Schools is having one of their
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so a safe place for kids to go and learn in a different environment.
All based around like skateboarding and bringing kids.
Just cool things.
Yeah, cool things like that. Yeah. All right, so now I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit. One of the other things I know that you're also a big outdoorsman, right? We were just goose hunting on Sunday. I was in your blind. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We had a ton of fun. got a couple of geese, so we didn't get shut out completely. But it was also just a great day to be able to hang out and talk. Talk to me about, because you mentioned that in kind of when you were talking about growing up, the hunting part of it, and just how does that all play into the quality of life? And if, for example, if you use that to bring in executives to Nebraska, or, just talk to me about, your appreciation for being an outdoorsman.
Yeah. So, and then I'll come back to the recruiting to Nebraska, because that's a really important subject. So don't let me forget, because we've recruited tons of high level jobs here and people from both coasts. But yeah, I grew up, I love the outdoors, right? If I'm not in an office, I'm outside. And it's not just hunting, it's hunting, fishing, skiing, wake surfing, whatever it may be, I want to be outside. And I believe that Nebraska, one of our greatest natural resources, is the land and the water and all the things that it has to offer for recreation. I mean, it's inexpensive for the average person, right? You can boat, you can fish. Our state park system is incredible.
Really great,
I know you and I are both on the board of the Game and Parks Foundation, and providing money to help expand that access. Really inexpensive lifetime hunting permits for kids and things like that.
Yeah, it's an amazing deal.
Amazing, yeah. And the parks and system, and just awesome. And so what that means is, and for me, from a kid from Nebraska with meager means, I can walk out my door and go hunting on people's property. I can go, obviously with permission, fishing, boating, all those things that are really hard to do in other parts of the country. You take it for granted that you don't have access.
Yeah, you were telling me about some of your friends on the East Coast and what a hassle it is to go out, goose hunting like we did.
Oh yeah, just to go anywhere and to get through the process and the cost of it and the permits and the, you have to oftentimes lease land and things like that, where the public travel time. Yeah, the public access here is amazing. And so I grew up with the love of the outdoors, like so many kids here, and just have story after story, experience after experience. And like you said, on Sunday, we had a not a great yielding day. We got a couple geese, but we had so much.
You said it was the slowest day so far this year.
Yeah, but we had so much fun, right? Just getting in there and being outside.
By the way, you're a good chef too. Like cooked up the breakfast burritos for us with the chorizo and everything like that. So.
I figure if I'm not getting you shots, I could definitely cook your breakfast. But so you have to learn how to cook too to be out there, right? To survive. Right. But yeah, so
what's that famous line? Come on, give us a line.
Oh, the shells. Yeah, this is my friend from Omaha that I was complaining about how sometimes like the clothes that we wear and things we do and how get expensive. And then, how many shells we shoot. And he's like, Jeff, the shells are the cheapest part of the hunt. Like don't worry about shooting the shells. But.
And what's the line from your favorite Netflix show?
Oh yeah, I love from yes. Okay, that was the other one. I gave you so many great lines in the last couple of days. It was I live to hunt and I hunt to live. Yeah, I'm a meat eater.
Right.
Yeah, Steve Rennell. It was just a great podcast and a great show. So yeah, I love the outdoors, and how can you not? It's so much fun, and it's a great benefit of living in Nebraska. And you should do it. And it might be mountain biking, right? Even the state. Kayaking, the trail systems here, hiking, biking, it is the parks. It's awesome, and it makes us different than a lot of places in the country.
Yeah. Now talk to me about how that plays into recruiting then.
Yeah. So when we've grown, and we definitely hire heavily from the colleges here, bring people up through the whole organization. If you look at the vast majority of the senior management team, going down to the top 140 people have come out of local colleges and universities and have come through the company. But oftentimes we have to recruit people here also. And I know that's something that you want to, right? Bring companies here, talent from the outside, and come to Nebraska. So what do I sell them on, right? I don't have an ocean, we don't have an ocean, and we don't have mountains, right? So that's where it's hard to compete against that.
Oh, wait. A lot of people don't know about Nebraska. Don't say that out loud.
Okay.
Maybe we'll
they think it was a flyover state, but
it's true. We have no mountains. We have no ocean.
We have no ocean. So what do we have?
Well, we do have the most miles of streams and rivers of any state in the country. 80,000 miles of streams and rivers.
So people don't know that, you know. But what do we have? So why would you want to come to Nebraska to work if you're living in New York City or San Francisco? And it's this. We have an unbelievable quality of life is the summary of it all. And the reason that we do is that we have a virtually, less than 2% unemployment rate, so everybody's employed. We have extremely low crime in the grand scheme of versus the rest of the world. We have clean air, we have clean water, we have great parks, we have great trails. sporting events, and events are so reasonable here. You forget how reasonably priced it is to go to an event at PBA or in Omaha, any of these places like concerts and sporting events. It's so accessible. And then we have amazing public schools, right? So you try to tell young people, that want to move, why move here? And once I get them here, they're sold, right? Yeah. All those things that they don't have. They don't necessarily have clean air. They don't have clean water. They don't have good schools. They don't have access to parks and trails without doing a lot of work. So once I get people here, it's really easy to sell the Nebraska way.
Yeah. So my dad is recruiting people here from the coast. He was going to start a company. It was going to be maybe on the East Coast because it's a media company. But then the pandemic came along. He's like, oh, that's, New York is crazy. Can't do that. So he started here in Nebraska, and he's moving people from the coast here. And he's finding that they come here and they go, wait, you mean I can have a house on a lake and it's less than half of what I'm paying for in New York, and I don't even have, it's a much bigger house and it's on a lake and it's a great commute, like great quality of life.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. My favorite story on that one was our head of capital markets was working in New York on Wall Street. So I had a guy, young guy, just got married. I won't mention his name on the podcast, but everybody knows him around town now. But he just got married, and he'd been doing work for us as a banker, and so I kept calling him every 6 months saying, "Hey, you should think about it. Come work for us. Come work for us. Come work for us." He's super talented. Went to Yale, and so I said. So I caught him on a bad day, and he said, "All right." He's like, "I'm having a bad day sitting here in New York.
I'll come out and visit you."
I'll come out and visit you.
Yeah.
So and I go, "Bring your wife." Just got married, and the story goes, and this is a true story. They sat on the runway at LaGuardia, and she looked at him and said, "Why the heck are we going on this trip to Nebraska?" And he said, "I'm doing this as a favor, Jeff. I'm just humoring him. I'm not going to actually take this job." And it was on a fall weekend, and I had organized everything. We had a home football game, and they came in. It was perfect weather. We won in overtime, so the crowd was going crazy. Yeah. They rented bikes and went out and biked the trails, and they sat on.
Which Lincoln's got really good trails around here.
Yeah, and then they sat on the runway in the Lincoln Airport that night on Sunday night, and she looked at him and said, "We're moving to Nebraska, aren't we?" And he said, "Yes." It just took one weekend, one fall weekend to convince. And also, my favorite thing about that was they were living in an apartment that was an 800 square foot apartment, and at the time was $3,000 in rent, which to now it would be probably $7,000, but it was 800 square foot, $3,000. They came here, bought a brand new house that was 3,000 square foot, and their mortgage was $800. So it flipped the square foot versus and now they have a family here, and they're a great part of the community, and it's just an awesome story.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can be repeated so many times, and especially now when you think about how so many businesses have learned to let people work remotely. Why wouldn't you want to live in some place with the great quality of life we have here in Nebraska if you can do that? I mean, especially when you're living in Nebraska, and we got airports that can get you both coasts, right? We got lots of direct flights. You can get direct flights now from Omaha to not only like places like New York and DC, but Seattle and San Diego and Las Vegas, just like all these places you want to get to really easy.
Yeah, I would say another beauty of Nebraska, being smack dab in the United States, is you can get anywhere in 3 hours. I can get a flight direct from Omaha to Miami or one direct to Seattle in 3 hours flight time. And it's just incredible. You can leave here in the morning and get in a meeting there in the afternoon or a vacation there, whatever you want. It's a great benefit. And then as a business, having this being a trucking center, because it's smack dab. You
can reach 90% of the U.S. population in 2 days by truck from Nebraska. Yeah, so as governor, I know these things.
Yeah, you have all these stats, and then and think about our fiber business and all that. So telecommunications, it all runs through Omaha too.
Right.
There's hoteling there for these massive telecommunications networks, and I mean it's awesome.
Yeah. So one of the things, speaking of awesome, one of the things we've done at the state is the Good Life is Calling, which is our program to ask Nebraskans who've left the state to come back and maybe find Nebraskans we don't know yet who are going to move here. And you have agreed to be an ambassador for that.
Yeah, I mean, if you call, Tony Goins calls, we're gonna definitely
so we've mentioned Tony a couple times. We probably should say who he is. Tony Goins is the Director for Economic Development for the state of Nebraska. He is not a native Nebraskan. He's actually from North Carolina. And he tells me he's lived in 14 cities, 10 states, 14 cities, never been treated anywhere better than Lincoln, Nebraska. Yeah, and he was working for World's Foremost Bank, and when Cabela's got bought out by Bass Pro, he stayed in Lincoln, because he wanted to be here, and then we ultimately were able to talk him into coming to be our work for the state here as a director of economic development.
He's one of the greatest ambassadors for the state of Nebraska. Everywhere he goes, it's incredible. You've hired some amazing people, by the way, and we've talked about that too, like how you've attracted this talent and brought them in and let them become ambassadors in Nebraska, and they're awesome. But yeah, so just he's an amazing individual, and
it's great to have a company like Nelnet being out there saying, hey, this is a great place. So part of our advertising campaign to promote that this is a great place to do business, a great place to live.
Yeah, and a lot of people know our brand name too, given the fact that we have, 20
Student
million
loans.
customers, 20 million customers across, 20 million customers across the country, So we're marketing too. But yeah, I was happy to do that, and hopefully, I don't scare people away.
Not at all. And actually, one of the things I was also going to mention is that during the pandemic, Nelnet was key in helping us set up the contact tracing. So again, getting back to your entrepreneurial spirit and being flexible, one of the things that as we're building up our resources to fight the pandemic, normally contact tracing is done at the local level at the public health departments, but we wanted to hire up about 1,000 people to stay to support them, and Nelnet was one of the companies that helped us do that.
Yeah, that and unemployment processing.
Oh, no, unemployment processing. Right,
Yeah,
right. That was huge. We got 4 years worth of claims in 4 months.
Yeah, I remember. So that was a call from your office. Also someone said, hey, we have a real problem here, which is suddenly everything's closing down when the pandemic started. All these people were filing for unemployment that had never had before, right? I think you had like a year's worth in weeks, and the state just wasn't at the size to handle that. No one anticipated a global pandemic.
We were not expecting a pandemic.
Yeah,
right.
A global pandemic to cause the need for unemployment. And so at the same time, the government had passed the CARES Act, which put a bunch of our student loan borrowers into no pay status. So we had staff available, but it took someone in your office, which was Tony, to think through that, hey, we have this massive problem, and they have this staff that's instantly available for this exact same reason. Why don't we marry the two? And I think within a week we had, hundreds of people in training to be able to process claims.
You had all your people to train to process those claims.
And access the systems, and then same way with contact tracing. And that again is the ingenuity of a public-private partnership coming together in a crisis and creating a solution within weeks. I don't know any other state that did anything like that in that speed. So hats off to your administration.
Well, and again, I want to go back to just talk about the culture of Nebraska. I think that's one of the things, and comment on this as well. When I was working at Ameritrade, I had people all the time say, man, everybody here seems to get along and works together well. And whether it was the private sector and what you could do there, or in the nonprofit world, we had people come in for some of the nonprofit events I was at and saying, man, your nonprofit community works really well together with law enforcement and the business community. I think like Project Harmony, which was a big collaboration of all those. Or just, again, just in general, when you look at we had the floods in 2019 or this pandemic, it's part of our culture in Nebraska to get along, to collaborate, to cooperate, and work together to overcome problems.
Yeah, we like, everybody here likes football analogies, and ours is when we close the door and we have a problem, we will fight it out, right? Everybody has different opinions, super bright people with different opinions and strategies, and we hash it all out, and then we call a play.
Yeah.
And then our rule is when you walk out that door, you're running the call play.
Right.
Yeah. If someone else is not running the call play, but that goes back to a lot of trust and friendships and relationships to get to that level of being able to be an effective team.
Yeah.
And it is Nebraska.
No, it's interesting because you're talking about this. I was just in Kearney last night for their Chamber of Commerce, and they had Carson, which was an Omaha company, but the woman who's their chief of staff is from Gibbon, which is close to Kearney. Anyway, she was speaking, and one of their 5 keys to success was disagree, but commit. It was exactly what you were just talking about there. It's like, yeah, well, we're going to disagree, we're going to fight it all out, but then once we make a decision, we're all committed to going forward. Yeah. And she also hit on something else that you were talking about also earlier, just this, you talked about honesty and that dialogue. One of the things she talked about as well in their company, one of their company values was a few moments of uncomfortableness versus resentment down the road.
Yeah.
Like, get it out on the air, get it out on the table, talk about it, don't keep it in, and don't like then be mad that, you didn't say something. Have that uncomfortable moment up front, but trust, that's, again, it gets back to a trusting environment. But then you avoid all the negative feelings that go on with not getting it out.
Yeah, and that company is a great example too of a success in Nebraska, Carson Wealth, right?
Yeah.
Incredible people there also. In fact,
they've grown tremendously as well.
Yeah, tremendously.
Just built a new building.
It's a beautiful building. I mean, and this is a classic example of Nebraska business too.
Kelsey Rue, I need to get her on this podcast.
Yeah, we all support we all support each other. In fact, those three, the leaders there, Aaron and Ron Carson, Aaron Shaban and her, we all. Just like everybody in Nebraska, people don't realize this. We talk, right? Even we compete.
It's one big small town.
Yeah, it's one big small town, and so they actually had a huge issue that they they needed help with, advice on, and they called us. Right before the end of the year, Ron and Aaron did, Mike and I, and we hashed through it and gave them advice, and I think they took the advice, and then they're thankful. And I can call those guys anytime, and I can do that with any company in Nebraska. I can call and get help, and we all look out for each other.
Again, that's a great example of why Nebraska is such a great place, because again, people will work with you, they'll talk with you, even when you're competitors. It's friendly competition.
Yeah.
All right, we're kind of running out at the end of the hour here at the time. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover that we did not get a chance to cover?
Well, Pete, I like talking about you. Maybe when you're talking about me, No,
the podcast is about the guests.
I know, but I you're such a personable guy, and I don't know what. I just think your life is so interesting, and what I want people to know.
Here's what we do, Jeff. Someday you have a podcast, and you can bring me on and interview me.
That's right. That's what I think I will do. Okay, we'll let it there. But we're rooting for you, and the best. You've done such an amazing job as governor, obviously in 8 years.
Well, it's a team effort, as you know.
Yeah. You built a great team, and you've got a great network, and I don't know. We're proud of everything here. So
great. Well, thanks. So if people want to follow along with you or Nelnet, how would they do that?
So I am on Instagram, and I rarely post, but really Nelnet stuff. Nelnet.com. Nelnet has all the social media posts to know what's going on. You can find us out. We're out there, and we're very prevalent.
Okay, great. Well, hey, thank you so much, Jeff, for being on. Really appreciate it. It's been great talking about the success story here in Nebraska and how, just again, the culture in Nebraska has really been part of the whole Nelnet experience. And so, again, just a great Nebraska success story. So thanks for coming on. And again, to all of our listeners and viewers out there, thank you for tuning in again for another episode of the Nebraska Way. If you would like to go on and give us a 5-star rating, again, here, shameless self-promotion to go out and get us some good ratings. We'd love to have that. As well as you can follow us at @GovRicketts. We're on Facebook, Instagram, all the social media out there as well. You can email at pete.ricketts@nebraska.gov. Send us an email. Let us know what you think. We're so pleased to have you tune into us every time we do one of these podcasts. Again, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all again. And please join us for the next episode of The Nebraska Way.
Paid for by Pete Ricketts for Governor, 1610 N Street, Suite 100, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68508.